Welcome back to another day in War Without End. The Gurlukovich mercenaries are probably the perfect example of a faction in Metal Gear. They're the ultimate proxy, being led by a variety of leaders for causes that are never quite true. They're constantly betrayed, they're constantly killed, and they never quite understand why. There are two primary rifles utilized by the Gurlukovich mercenaries, the AKS-74U and the AN-94. Today I want to compare and contrast both of them in MGS2 and talk a little bit about their real-life counterparts, and hopefully by the end you'll understand my conclusions as to why I think the better rifle is the better rifle for the situation. The AKS-74U was designed during the Soviets' occupation of Afghanistan. You see, while the AK-74 quickly became one of the most prolific rifles ever made, and the new 545 by 39mm round was making waves for being lighter, more accurate, and having more wounding potential, it still didn't change the fact that rear echelon supporting troops didn't really need a full-sized rifle. They needed something more compact. Now, the men in charge of the logistics for the Soviet military at the time decided that it would be wise to create a more compact package that was magazine compatible with the AK-74. And that's exactly what they did with the AKS-74U. It has a much shorter barrel, has a foldable stock, and is much more comfortable in closer quarters. However, it still maintains the 545 by 39. This rifle was briefly used by Soviet Special Force Spetsnaz, however it was quickly discarded in favor of the AK-74. You see, the 545 by 39mm round was not really ever meant for a barrel this short, so you got a very violent recoil pulse as well as muzzle flash. You also had the problem that, because of the shorter barrel design, the AKS-74U wasn't completely parts compatible with the AK-74. So while you could still swap out magazines no problem, it didn't change the fact that when it came down to maintenance or parts replacement in the field, if you were next to a guy using an AK-74, your parts wouldn't be compatible with his parts. Without getting in too much to military logistics, I'll just simply say this is not a good thing for an army. In regards to how it is in game, we see the Tanker Assault Force utilize the AKS-74U. In-game, they equip it with a suppressor and a laser sight. Now, the suppressor makes a lot of sense for this setup, as when you're using a gun like the AKS-74U indoors, you want something to at least try to tame the violent recoil and muzzle flash. But I really do need to stress that even with a suppressor like this, shooting the AKS-74U indoors at nighttime in darker environments like what you would find in the belly of a boat, this is not going to be a comfortable shooting experience. Even with the suppressor, it's going to be incredibly loud, and the flash is still going to damage your eyes, especially if you're using night vision goggles like the Tanker Assault Force. In regards to how this gun plays in MGS2, it's very gimmicky. You see, the only time it really has a use is when Raiden is using it to disguise himself and access Richard Ames with the hostages. However, in function, the AKS-74U isn't very maneuverable. It's a very spray and pray kind of gun. Even the scenarios, the very niche scenarios in which you can utilize the suppressed AKS-74U to quickly take out a group of guys before an alert can be called, the SOCOM performs a lot better and gives you a lot more options in regards to consistent accuracy.
No! That is not Solid Snake!
Now, the bulk of the Gurlukovich forces utilize the AN-94. The AN-94 was designed in 1994 as a potential replacement for the AK-74. The AN-94 is technically not an AK, because its interiors function very differently from how an AK-74, an AKM, an AKS-74U, or any variant of an AK functions. You see, the AN-94 utilizes a reciprocating barrel and a specialized 2-round burst mechanism that works in tandem with that reciprocating barrel. So basically what happens is that you squeeze the trigger and the gun will fire 2 rounds, but because of the movement of the barrel, it feels like you're only shooting 1. So in theory, it's supposed to make your average soldier a lot more accurate while still putting more rounds on target. In reality, this is said to work fairly well. However, the design makes the gun so complex, which makes it harder to maintain on the field. It also requires different training than your average AK. While the magazines are still compatible, the gun just ended up being too different, too complex, and too difficult to maintain to logistically have it make sense to replace the AK-74. So while the AN-94 is by no means a bad rifle, this was pretty much only adopted by the Russian military for like 5 minutes, and this was near 2001, I believe. During the time frame in which the games actually take place, 2007 to 2009, it would not still be the Russian military's go-to rifle. Now, you never really get to use the AN-94, at least not until MGS4, where it just kind of melds in with the other million assault rifles. However, in MGS2, we actually see the guards combat you and utilizing the burst mechanic with their AN-94. Now, I don't remember if it uses specifically a 2-round burst. However, the burst fire methods of the aggressive AI is actually very well balanced. You see, were you to have the AI use the AN-94 on full auto, it would feel kind of overwhelming and unfair when you get caught, like you don't really have breathing room to try to fight or get away. However, between the bursts, you have that option to either run in the opposite direction or return fire. So having a burst fire weapon be your enemy's go-to rifle is actually a pretty smart choice on behalf of the development team in regards to balancing. And while you see this across the entire Metal Gear series with, a variety of different weapons, I find it kind of cool that a iconic burst fire weapon like the AN-94 takes the role in MGS2. Now, in regards to why Gurlukovich mercenaries are using these 2 very niche guns that were never really utilized by the Russian military for too long, the one means I can actually think of is surplus. When a military weapon goes out of style or is replaced, you get what's called a surplus. Basically, you get a large quantity of weapons that have been produced on an industrial scale that are now for sale at a very cheap price because the military's in a rush to get rid of them. Now, if you are Sergei Gurlukovich and you're trying to arm an entire militant force that is disconnected from the mainline Russian army, buying surplus rifles would make a lot of sense. And the variety you'd get with a close quarters weapon and a full-size rifle would be a pretty damn good deal. Couple the fact together that the AKS-74U and the AN-94 are compatible with each other's magazines, and even though these weapons are both niche and have their own very serious downsides, it makes sense why he would arm his troops with them. In regards to what I believe would be the better weapon, I would have to go with the AN-94. It's definitely a much too complicated weapon, it's definitely a very gimmicky weapon, and it wouldn't be my first choice if I could choose any other rifle. But the AKS-74U is just such an impractical weapon in regards to recoil, comfort, accuracy. The shorter barrel means you lose all of the ballistic value of the 545 by 39mm. That I just kind of have to go with the more practical full-sized rifle. But what do you think? If you were a Gurlukovich mercenary and you had to be equipped with either the AKS-74U or the AN-94, which would you choose and why? Let me know down below. This has been Pliskin, and I'll see you again in another day in War Without End.
This is Solid Snake. Hey, subscribe to Pliskin Boy. God damn it.
You heard him.